When I asked my son's fiancée when the wedding would be, she looked me straight in the eye and said it was yesterday. Just like that, no hesitation, no apology, as if I didn't exist. I remember standing there in my kitchen, the coffee still warm in my hand, while those words cut right through me. Yesterday. The wedding had already happened. My son, the boy I raised alone after his father died, had married her without even telling me. I didn't cry. Not right away. I just stood there, feeling like someone had quietly erased me from the story of my own life. And the worst part wasn't the betrayal. It was realizing how easily they'd done it. When my husband Paul passed away 5 years ago, the house suddenly became too quiet. I used to hate the sound of the old floorboards creaking under his steps, but after he was gone, that sound became something I missed so deeply it hurt. He used to hum every morning, out of tune, making coffee like it was a ritual. Now, the silence in this house feels heavy, like it's pressing down on my chest. Ethan was all I had left, my only son, my reason to get up every day, even when I didn't feel like it. He lived 2 hours away in Portland and worked long hours in tech. I didn't want to bother him, so I'd text him simple things. Hi, sweetheart, just checking in, or made your favorite pie today. He always replied with a heart emoji or a quick love you, mum. Short messages, but I held on to them like treasures. Then one day he called and said he'd met someone. Her name was Vanessa. I could tell from the way he said her name that he was gone already, emotionally. The kind of tone a man uses when he's not just in love, he's consumed. He brought her over that spring. She was beautiful, polished, the kind of woman who knows how to take up space without seeming to. Perfectly straight hair, nails done, soft perfume that lingered in the air after she left. She smiled a lot, but it was the kind of smile that never reached her eyes. Still, I told myself not to judge. My son was happy, and that was supposed to be enough. The first visit went well enough. I made roast chicken, mashed potatoes, and green beans. Nothing fancy, but the kind of meal Ethan grew up with. Vanessa barely ate. She said she was cutting carbs. Instead, she complimented the tablecloth, the curtains, the cozy small-town vibe. Every word she said felt like a polite insult dressed in silk, but Ethan didn't notice. He just looked at her like she was sunlight. After they left, I found her coffee cup on the counter, lipstick still on the rim, a faint pink print. It's strange what details stick in your mind. I stared at that cup longer than I should have, wondering why something so delicate could feel so cold. Over the months, Ethan visited less. He said work was crazy, then that Vanessa's schedule was packed, then that they'd start coming once things settled down. They never did. I tried not to take it personally. Life moves on, I told myself. Kids grow up, they build their own worlds. But I started to notice small changes, subtle but sharp. When I called, Vanessa answered instead of Ethan. He's in a meeting, she'd say, always polite, always efficient. When Ethan did pick up, he sounded distracted, like someone was listening. I began to feel like a guest in my own relationship with my son. I sent them Christmas gifts, a handmade quilt and a cookbook Paul had loved. Weeks passed, no reply, then a text. Got them, thanks. No heart emoji this time, just that flat sentence. Sometimes, late at night, I'd look at the photo of Ethan as a boy, gap-toothed smile, messy hair, his hand clutching a seashell he'd found on the shore. Back then, he used to tell me, "I'll never leave you, Mom." I didn't realize that promise had an expiration date. When I finally heard from him again, it was because I asked about the wedding. I thought they were still planning it. But that one question, just 7 harmless words, ended the version of my life I'd been clinging to. I didn't even know what to say after that. My mouth opened, but no words came out. Vanessa was still standing there, perfectly calm, like she hadn't just dropped a bomb into my chest. I heard myself say, "Oh, congratulations then." My voice didn't even sound like mine. She smiled, that polite, distant smile again. "Thank you, Clara. It was very small, just us and a few close friends. You know how stressful big weddings can be." No, I didn't know. because I wasn't invited. She went on talking, something about eloping, about how spontaneous it felt, but I couldn't hear the rest. My ears were ringing, and for a second, the room felt tilted, like I was standing on a moving boat. After she left, I sat at the kitchen table for a long time, staring at the empty chair across from me. Paul's chair. I tried to imagine what he would have said. He probably would have reached for my hand, said something simple like, "Let it go. Clara, let the boy live his life." But even he would have been hurt. He was sentimental like that. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment over and over, the way she said yesterday, so casually like it meant nothing, like my presence, my love, my years of raising him alone. All of it fit into one small, disposable word. I told myself I wouldn't cry, but tears have a way of finding you when the house is dark and no one's watching. The next morning, I did what mothers do. I made coffee, fed the cat, watered the plants, pretended the world hadn't just shifted. I even baked banana bread because Ethan used to love it. For a moment, I let myself imagine he'd walk through the door again, smiling, saying, "Mom, that smells amazing." But the door stayed closed. 2 days later, he called. His voice was cheerful, too cheerful. "Hey, Mom, just wanted to let you know, Vanessa and I decided to do a courthouse wedding. It just felt right. We'll have a bigger thing later." I could hear traffic behind him, music playing, her laughter in the background. I said, "I see. Well, I hope you're happy." There was a pause, maybe half a second too long, before he said, "Of course we are. Vanessa says hi." Then he hung up. That night, I opened the old photo albums. I hadn't looked through them since Paul's funeral. There was Ethan's baby picture, his first birthday, his high school graduation. Every page felt like a lifetime ago. I remembered staying up late to sew his Halloween costumes, sitting on the bleachers during his baseball games, the nights he'd fall asleep on the couch while we watched movies. I had always told myself that motherhood was a kind of forever, that no matter how old he got, there'd still be some invisible thread between us. But now it felt like that thread had snapped, and I didn't even notice when it happened. I started writing him a letter that night, not one I ever planned to send, just words I needed to say somewhere. I wrote about how proud I was of him, about how I hoped Vanessa truly loved him. Then the truth spilled out. I missed him. I missed us. When I finished, I folded the letter and placed it in Paul's old cigar box, the one I keep in my dresser drawer. It's filled with small things I can't throw away, movie tickets, postcards, birthday cards Ethan made when he was little. That letter joined the others, another piece of a life that felt like it was fading. A week later, a wedding photo appeared on social media. Someone had tagged them, Ethan in a grey suit, Vanessa in a short white dress, both of them smiling against a courthouse wall. My son looked happy, but not the kind of happy I recognized. I stared at that picture for a long time. Then I closed my laptop, turned off the lights, and whispered into the quiet, "You really did it without me." The house made no sound back, just the ticking of the clock, counting time that suddenly felt longer than ever. A month passed before I saw them again. I told myself not to reach out first, to give them space, to let them settle. But silence has a weight, and after 4 weeks, it was crushing me. So I texted Ethan, asking if they'd like to come for Sunday lunch. He replied an hour later, "Sure, Vanessa's off that day." It wasn't much, but I clung to it. I spent the whole Saturday cleaning, cooking, trying not to overdo it, but failing anyway. The house smelled like rosemary and baked chicken again. I even used the good plates, the ones Paul bought for our 10th anniversary. When their car finally pulled into the driveway, I caught my breath. Ethan got out first. He looked the same, but somehow different. More polished maybe, or just older. Vanessa stepped out next. Sunglasses, crisp white blouse, holding a small bouquet. "We brought flowers," she said, smiling that perfect smile. They looked like a magazine couple, effortless, coordinated, camera-ready. I suddenly became aware of my wrinkled apron and the faint smell of bleach on my hands. Come in," I said too brightly. We sat at the table. Ethan complimented the food. Vanessa took small bites and kept her phone face down beside her plate. Every now and then it lit up and she'd glance at it quickly, then smile at nothing. I tried to ask about their life in the city, the new apartment, his job, her work. Vanessa did most of the talking. Ethan just nodded, occasionally adding, "Yeah, it's been great," or "We've been busy." It felt rehearsed, like they were performing a version of themselves for me. At one point, I reached for his hand, the way I always used to, but he was already lifting his glass. I pulled back, pretending to adjust the napkin. After dessert, Vanessa stood up and said, "I should get going soon. We promised to stop by a friend's place." Ethan looked at her, then back at me, apologetic. "Sorry, Mom. Rain check?" I smiled, pretending not to care. "Of course, sweetheart. You've got a life now." When they left, I stood at the window watching their car disappear down the road. I stayed there long after the taillights vanished, until the only thing left was my own reflection staring back at me. The next few weeks were quiet again. I filled my days with small things, gardening, knitting, volunteering at the clinic. I tried to convince myself I was fine, but grief isn't just for the dead. Sometimes it's for the living who've forgotten you. Then one morning, Vanessa called. It was the first time she'd ever called me directly. "Hi, Clara. Just wanted to check if you'd be okay watching Daisy for a weekend." "Daisy?" I asked, confused. "Our dog," she said, as if I should have known. "We're going on a quick trip to Boston. It would be so helpful." I hesitated. Of course, I'd love to. When they dropped Daisy off, Vanessa handed me a typed list. Feeding times, favourite treats, bedtime routine. She thanked me sweetly, kissed the air beside my cheek, and was gone in under 3 minutes. Ethan barely said a word. But Daisy was different. She followed me around the house, curling up by my feet, wagging her tail every time I moved. For 2 days, the house felt alive again. I even caught myself laughing. When they returned, Vanessa barely looked up from her phone. "Thanks again, Clara. You're a lifesaver." Ethan hugged me quickly, a light, distracted hug that smelled faintly of cologne I didn't recognize. After they left, the silence returned, heavier this time. That night, I found a note tucked inside Daisy's carrier bag. It was just a receipt, but the handwriting caught my eye. Ethan's signature. Under pet boarding, it said, "Paid in full." They'd planned to board the dog. I was the backup. It shouldn't have hurt as much as it did, but it did. Because love, real love, is never an afterthought. And I was starting to realize that's what I'd become. I tried not to see patterns, but once you notice the shape of something, you can't unsee it. Vanessa started calling more often, not to talk, but to organize. "Ethan's birthday dinner is next weekend," she'd say. "We're keeping it small this year, just a few of his colleagues." Always phrased kindly, but the meaning was clear. I wasn't on the list. The first time, I brushed it off. Maybe the restaurant was too crowded. Maybe she thought I wouldn't enjoy it. But when it happened again and again, the excuses began to sound rehearsed. She sent photos afterward, Ethan smiling beside her, a candlelit table, captions like, "Just us." Always us, never family. I didn't want to resent her. I really didn't. I tried to remember that Ethan chose her, that he was building a life. But each time she spoke to me, I felt like she was drawing invisible lines between what was hers and what was no longer mine. One Sunday, I called Ethan just to say hello. Vanessa answered. "Oh, hi, Clara. He's in the shower," she said, voice sugary smooth. "But I'll tell him you called." Hours passed, no call back. When I tried again the next day, she answered again, cheerful, efficient, untouchable. "Ethan's swamped this week. Maybe he'll ring you when he can." He didn't. I started leaving shorter messages, then none at all. The last one I sent was just, "Thinking of you." It stayed on read. Weeks later, they invited me for Thanksgiving. I almost said no. Pride is a strange thing, but loneliness can bend even the stiffest spine. I baked 2 pies, packed them carefully, and drove the 2 hours to their apartment. Vanessa greeted me at the door with a tight smile. "You made it. So glad you could come." Her tone was sweet, but her eyes flicked to the pies like she was calculating counter space. The apartment was spotless, almost staged. Candles, matching silverware, music playing low. There were 6 guests, all from Vanessa's side. I didn't know any of them. Ethan looked genuinely happy to see me, but distracted. When I hugged him, he patted my back instead of holding me. Dinner was pleasant enough, but every conversation felt filtered. When I mentioned Ethan's childhood, his first fishing trip, the time he broke his arm, Vanessa laughed lightly and said, "Oh, I've heard that story," then turned to another guest before I could finish. I sat quietly after that, smiling when appropriate, nodding when spoken to. The table buzzed with laughter, but it all felt far away. After dinner, I started to help clear the table. Vanessa stopped me with a gentle hand on my wrist. "Oh no, Clara, please, you're a guest." Something about the way she said guest landed wrong. When I got home that night, I placed the leftover pie on the counter and didn't touch it. The house felt emptier than usual, as if the silence was mocking me. A few days later, a card arrived in the mail, a thank you note from Vanessa, signed neatly, with love, Vanessa and Ethan. Her handwriting was elegant, perfect loops, no smudges. Ethan's name looked like it had been added after, in a different pen. That night, I reread old text messages, the ones from before. Love you, Mum. Miss you. Call you tomorrow. Each one a small piece of a version of him I couldn't seem to reach anymore. I used to think losing someone meant death. Now I knew better. You can lose a person who's still breathing, who still walks and laughs and eats. They just stop being yours. Sometimes I'd sit on the porch with Daisy when they let me watch her again. The ocean was visible from my front yard, grey and calm, waves moving like the slow pulse of time. I'd imagine Ethan as a boy again, running along that same shore, yelling for me to look at what he found. I'd call back, "I see you." Now, no matter how loud I tried to reach him, it felt like he couldn't hear me anymore. Or maybe he just didn't want to. It was early spring when Vanessa started asking questions that didn't sound like questions. "Clara, have you ever thought about moving closer to the city?" she asked one afternoon, over tea on my porch. She'd stopped by just to visit, though Ethan wasn't with her. Her smile was easy, her tone casual, too casual. "I like it here," I said. "Been in this house for 40 years. Paul built half of it himself." She nodded, stirring her tea, eyes drifting around the porch, the chipped railings, the old wicker chairs, the view of the water beyond the dunes. "It's lovely. So much potential." "Potential for what?" I asked. She smiled. "For something new. You know, these old coastal houses. People love to rent them out for vacations now. You could make a fortune with a little renovation." Her words landed softly, but my stomach tightened. I'd lived long enough to know when someone was looking at something versus seeing it. Vanessa wasn't admiring the house. She was appraising it. A few weeks later, Ethan called. He sounded distracted but cheerful. "Vanessa's been helping me look at some investment options. She's really good with that stuff, Mum. Knows all about real estate." "Does she now?" I said. He chuckled. "Yeah, she mentioned how your place could be amazing as an Airbnb. Said she'd help you get started if you ever wanted." I wanted to laugh, but it came out bitter instead. "Ethan, this house isn't an investment, it's our home." "I know, Mom. She didn't mean anything by it." But she did. I could feel it. After that, Vanessa began showing up more, sometimes with coffee, sometimes with excuses. "Ethan's working late," she'd say. I was nearby, thought I'd check in. Always polite, always sweet. She'd compliment my garden, ask about my health, bring up how expensive maintenance must be for an older home. "You must spend a fortune keeping this place up," she said once, tracing her manicured finger along the wooden frame of the window. "Insurance, repairs, taxes. It must be exhausting." "It's manageable," I said. She tilted her head, smiling just enough. "Still, wouldn't it be nice to have less to worry about? You could sell, move into something smaller, maybe near us. I'd love to help you find a condo." Her voice was gentle, her words wrapped in kindness, but every suggestion felt like a small shove. Later that week, I got a call from Ethan. He was excited. Vanessa found this great investment property. We might use some of our savings to flip it. She's been learning so much. I congratulated him, trying to sound supportive, but something in me ached. The way he talked about her now, like she was the compass of his life, left no room for anyone else. That night, I opened my mailbox and found a letter from the property tax office. My heart skipped when I saw the seal, not because of the bill, but because of the envelope behind it. A glossy flyer from a realtor offering cash for coastal homes. The timing felt too convenient. I put both envelopes aside and tried to shake the feeling, but it lingered. I began noticing how Vanessa's tone had changed. Softer when Ethan was around, sharper when he wasn't. She'd interrupt me mid-sentence, finish my thoughts, correct small details about stories I told. And Ethan never noticed, or maybe he chose not to. One afternoon, while we were having lunch together, I caught her looking around the living room again. The framed photos, Paul's old armchair, the fireplace mantle. Her eyes lingered on the portrait of Paul and me on our wedding day. "You have so many memories here," she said. "It must be hard holding on to all that." I smiled, though my jaw felt tight. "Some things are worth holding on to." She nodded, her smile returning. "Of course, I just think sometimes letting go can make space for better things." When she left that day, I watched her drive away in her spotless white SUV. The sunlight hit the windshield just right, and for a second I couldn't see her face, only my own reflection staring back at me. That night, I dreamed that the ocean outside my window had crept up to the porch. The water was calm, almost kind, but it kept rising until the house began to float. When I woke, my heart was pounding. Maybe it was just a dream. Or maybe my mind was trying to tell me something, that things I thought were steady could slip away quietly if I wasn't paying attention. It started with the mail. Vanessa began picking it up whenever she came over, saying she wanted to help organize. At first it was harmless, sorting bills, stacking letters neatly on the counter. Then one day I noticed an envelope missing. It was from the insurance company. "Oh, I opened that for you," she said when I asked. "You always say those forms are confusing. Don't worry, I handled it." Handled it. Those words made me uneasy. "Vanessa, I appreciate your help," I said carefully, "but I can take care of my own mail." She smiled, soft but firm. "Of course, I just don't want you to stress." The next week she arrived with a folder, color-coded tabs, sticky notes, highlighters. "I made a system for your paperwork," she said proudly. "Taxes, utilities, bank statements. You'll thank me later." Ethan stood behind her, smiling. "She's amazing, Mom. You wouldn't believe how organized she is." I forced a smile. "I can see that." When they left, I flipped through the folder. Everything was neat, efficient, except my will, which was missing from the drawer where I kept it. I looked everywhere. Gone. I didn't want to accuse anyone, not yet. But that night I couldn't sleep. I kept picturing her calm face, that smooth tone, the way she called me Clara instead of Mom. Always polite, always a little too professional, like she was preparing a file, not talking to a person. A few days later, Ethan called. "Vanessa mentioned your roof needs repair. We can help cover the cost if you want." She found a contractor. "I haven't even called for an estimate," I said. "Oh, well, she already did. They'll swing by tomorrow." My chest tightened. "Ethan, you don't have to do that." "Mom," he said, a hint of impatience in his voice. "She's just trying to help. Why are you making it sound like a problem?" That was the first time I heard that tone from him, defensive, distant. When the contractor came, he didn't look at me. He looked at Vanessa, who stood in my driveway, clipboard in hand. They spoke in a language of plans and numbers, while I stood there like a bystander. After he left, Vanessa turned to me, cheerful as ever. "You'll love the new shingles. I told him to go with the weatherproof kind, better for resale." "Resale?" I repeated. She blinked, then smiled. "Oh, I just mean it increases value. You never know what the future holds. I wanted to scream, but instead I said, "You're right, you never know." That night, I found my will again, tucked neatly into the new folder she'd made, under a tab labeled legal. I took it out, read it twice, then moved it to my dresser drawer under Paul's things. I slept with the drawer locked. The following weekend, Ethan came alone. He looked tired, like someone had drained the light out of him. "Mom," he began, sitting at the table, "Vanessa feels like you don't trust her." "I wonder why," I said quietly. He sighed. "She's just trying to make things easier for you. She worries about you living out here by yourself. You should be grateful." That word, grateful, burned. "Ethan," I said, steady but calm, "I don't need her managing my life or my house." He rubbed his temples. "You always think the worst of people." I wanted to tell him that I didn't, that I had trusted people all my life, and it had cost me every time. But looking at his face, the tired eyes that used to hold such warmth, I knew it wouldn't matter. He wasn't listening to me anymore, he was listening to her. Before he left, he kissed my cheek and said, "Please, try to get along, for me." When the door closed, I sat at the table staring at his untouched coffee. The steam had faded, leaving a thin skin across the top, fragile, cold. That night, I made a decision. I called my lawyer, a quiet man named Harris I'd known since Paul died. "I think I should make a few updates," I told him. "Of course, Mrs. Jennings," he said. "Do you want to move up your next appointment?" "Yes," I said. "Soon." When I hung up, I felt something I hadn't in months. Not relief exactly, but control. A small, steady flicker of it. I didn't know yet what Vanessa was planning, but I wasn't going to wait to find out. The next morning, I drove into town to meet Mr. Harris. His office was small, tucked behind the post office, with the same worn carpet and the same faint smell of coffee it had always had. He looked surprised to see me. "Clara, it's been a while," he said, standing up from his desk. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine," I lied. "I just need to make some updates." He nodded, patient as ever, sliding a legal pad across the table. "Tell me what you'd like to change." I took a deep breath. "Everything." We went over the details slowly. I told him about the house, the savings, Paul's old life insurance. He listened without judgment, just writing notes. When we were done, he looked up and said gently, "You want to make sure the house doesn't go to your son and his wife?" "I want it to go somewhere it will matter," I said. "There's a hospice centre nearby. They took care of Paul at the end. They could use it more than anyone else." He nodded. "It's your decision." For the first time in months, I felt steady, like the ground under my feet was mine again. When I got home, I saw Vanessa's car in the driveway. She was sitting on the porch steps, scrolling through her phone. "There you are," she said, standing up. "We were worried." We. She always spoke like that, as if Ethan and she were a single unit, and I was something outside of it. "I just had some errands," I said. She smiled. "I told Ethan you shouldn't be driving so much. Maybe we can handle those things for you next time." I ignored the comment and walked past her. She followed me into the kitchen, still talking, about some new business idea, about how the market was changing. I nodded when necessary, but my mind was elsewhere. She stopped when she noticed the stack of papers on the counter, my copies from Mr. Harris. Her eyes flicked over them before I could cover them with a magazine. "Working on something?" she asked lightly. "Just sorting things," I said. She smiled, but I could see the curiosity behind it. "You're so independent, Clara. I admire that." The next few weeks, she started visiting more often. Sometimes she brought groceries I hadn't asked for. Sometimes she rearranged things in my kitchen to make it easier. I'd find drawers moved, photos slightly out of place, Paul's old watch on a different shelf. Tiny shifts, small enough to question whether I was imagining them. Ethan called less. When he did, our conversations felt shorter, polite, distant. I missed the sound of his real laughter, the one that used to fill a room. One Saturday, Vanessa invited me to brunch in the city. Just us girls, she said. I didn't want to go, but part of me was curious. Maybe I could understand her better if I saw her world. The restaurant was beautiful. White tablecloths, glasses that sparkled in the light. Vanessa waved at someone across the room, all smiles. She looked perfectly at home. I know you probably think I'm too forward sometimes, she said once we sat down, but I just want the best for Ethan, and for you. The best? I repeated. She nodded. You've done enough, Clara. You've given your whole life to this house, to him. It's time to rest. Let us take care of things. There it was, said softly, almost lovingly, but sharp underneath. I'm not tired, I said. She smiled, eyes steady on mine. Everyone gets tired eventually. The words stayed with me long after brunch ended. On the drive home, I caught myself gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles went white. When I reached the house, I sat in the car for a few minutes, staring at the porch. The same porch where Paul once stood waiting for me with flowers. The same steps where Vanessa had sat that morning, scrolling through her phone like she already belonged there. I knew then that whatever game she was playing, it wasn't just about control, it was about ownership. So that night, I opened my new will again. I read every word carefully, then signed it in the quiet of my kitchen. No witnesses, no fanfare, just the sound of my pen on paper and the steady tick of the clock. For the first time, the silence in the house didn't scare me. It felt like armor. 2 weeks later, Vanessa showed up again, unannounced this time. Her car pulled up just as I was watering the garden. She waved through the windshield before stepping out, all smiles and perfume. Clara, I was in the area and thought I'd stop by. I almost laughed. My house is 40 minutes from anything that counts as the area, but I smiled anyway. How nice of you. She followed me inside, glancing around like she was taking inventory. Her eyes landed on the kitchen counter, bare, except for a cup of coffee and yesterday's newspaper. The papers from Mr. Harris were nowhere in sight. I'd locked them in Paul's old desk. I haven't seen Ethan much lately, I said, testing her tone. Oh, he's been so busy, she replied, wandering toward the living room. Big project at work. He's really doing well, you'd be proud. I always am. She stopped at the bookshelf, running her fingers along the spines. You have so many documents here, old records, right? Mostly memories, I said. Her hand paused on a photo frame. Ethan, age 6, holding a fish bigger than his arm. You kept everything. Some things matter more with time. She smiled faintly, then turned. Speaking of time, have you thought about what happens to all this, eventually? There it was again, the softness that carried teeth. I try not to plan my funeral over coffee, I said lightly. She laughed, a bright practice sound. I didn't mean that. I just worry about you, Clara. You're alone out here. What if something happened? I'd handle it, I said. She studied me for a moment, her eyes narrowing almost imperceptibly. Then she said, You've been seeing that lawyer again, haven't you? My chest tightened, but I kept my face calm. Mr. Harris? He helps with my taxes every year. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Of course. I just hope you're not letting anyone take advantage of you. There are scams, Good thing I'm hard to scam, I said. For a few seconds, we just looked at each other. The air between us felt heavy, polite but sharp. Then, as quickly as she'd come, she clapped her hands together and said, Well, I should get going. We have dinner plans. She hugged me before leaving. Light, quick, her perfume lingering like a warning. After she drove off, I locked the front door and went straight to Paul's desk. The folder was still there. I touched it just to be sure. Then I took it out, wrapped it in a plain grocery bag, and hid it in the linen closet under a stack of old blankets. That night, Ethan called. It was late, later than usual. Mom, he said, his voice careful. Vanessa mentioned you've been kind of distant lately. Are you okay? I'm fine, I said. Just busy. Busy with what? The way he asked made me pause. He didn't mean it with curiosity. It sounded like he was checking on something. Just life, Ethan. He exhaled softly. You know you can tell me anything, right? I wanted to believe that. I wanted to tell him everything, how I saw the way she looked around the house, how she opened drawers when she thought I wasn't watching, how her sweetness was starting to sound like surveillance. But I couldn't. If I said it out loud, I'd sound paranoid, and that's exactly what she wanted. Of course, I said. I'm fine. We hung up after a few minutes, both pretending things were normal. The next morning, I found a note taped to my door, a single sheet of paper, typed neatly. You forgot your appointment yesterday. Dr. Keane, 10:30 a.m. There was no signature, just that line. But I hadn't made any appointment. And the only person who'd been there yesterday was Vanessa. I looked around the porch, nothing disturbed, everything still. But the feeling in my chest didn't fade. That afternoon, I went to see Mr. Harris again. I need to finalize everything, I told him, and I want copies, sealed. He nodded, not asking questions. When I got home, I made tea and sat by the window, watching the waves roll in. For the first time, I realized how quiet defense can be, how strength doesn't always sound like shouting. Sometimes it sounds like not saying a word. I knew Vanessa would be back. People like her always come back. Not because they care, but because they can't stand not knowing what you're hiding. Vanessa came again the following weekend, this time with Ethan. It had been weeks since I'd seen them together. They brought flowers, white lilies, the kind Paul used to hate because they reminded him of funerals. Surprise visit, Ethan said, kissing my cheek. He smelled of aftershave and distance. How nice, I said, setting the flowers in a vase. To what do I owe it? Vanessa laughed. Do we need a reason? Maybe not, but she never did anything without one. We sat in the living room. Ethan talked about work, the usual surface-level chatter, while Vanessa listened, smiling too much. Her gaze kept drifting to the bookshelves, the drawers, the hallway. Every glance felt like a question. At one point, she leaned forward. Clara, do you still have that attorney friend? What's his name, Mr. Harris? I felt my pulse quicken, but my voice stayed even. Yes, why? Oh, nothing serious, she said, waving a hand. It's just that Ethan and I have been thinking about updating our wills too. You know, just being responsible adults. Ethan nodded, clearly unaware of the undertone. Yeah, she's right. We figured it's time. That's smart, I said. Vanessa smiled. Maybe you could share his contact. I heard he's very thorough. There it was, the real reason. I'll look it up for you, I said. She beamed, satisfied. But later, when she used the restroom, I heard the faint sound of drawers opening down the hall. The bathroom door never creaked that way. I walked toward the noise quietly. She was standing in the study, her hand on the desk drawer, the one that used to hold the folder. Looking for something? I asked. She turned, startled but quick to recover. Oh, I thought this was the restroom. The one you've used 3 times before? I asked. She laughed softly. Right, my mistake. Ethan appeared behind me, smiling awkwardly. Everything okay? Fine, I said. Vanessa brushed past me, her perfume trailing like smoke. I just get turned around in old houses, she said. After they left, I stood in the doorway for a long time, my heart beating steady but hard. I checked the linen closet. The folder was still there, wrapped in its grocery bag cocoon. Safe, for now. A few days later, Ethan called again. This time, his tone was off. Mom, Vanessa said you seemed tense last weekend. Is everything all right? I'm fine. She's worried about you. She thinks maybe the house is too much to handle alone. I closed my eyes. Ethan, I've been handling this house since before you were born. I know, Mom, but things change. We could help. Help? I asked. Or take over? There was a pause. That's not fair. Neither is pretending I'm helpless, I said softly. He sighed. Vanessa just wants what's best for everyone. For everyone, I repeated. Or for herself. Mum. Ethan, I interrupted, my voice steady. Do you really think she came by last week just to chat? He hesitated, and in that silence I heard it, the crack between them. Small, but there. I don't know what you're implying, he said finally. I'm not implying anything. I'm telling you to be careful. That night, I sat by the window watching the ocean. The moonlight stretched across the water like a path leading nowhere. I thought about the way Vanessa moved through my house. Graceful, practiced, always knowing what to touch and what to leave alone. Control isn't always loud. Sometimes it wears kindness like a costume. The next morning, I received an email from Mr. Harris confirming that everything had been finalized. The house, the assets, all secured exactly as I wanted. I printed the confirmation and placed it in a plain envelope, then slid it into the back of Paul's old Bible on the top shelf. If Vanessa came looking again, she wouldn't find anything. That weekend, she texted, "Hi, Clara. Thinking of dropping by tomorrow. Want me to bring groceries?" I typed, "Sure, that would be lovely," and sent it. Then I unplugged the landline, locked the drawers, and waited. Because sometimes when someone thinks they're closing in, the smartest thing to do is let them believe it. Vanessa arrived the next morning, just as she promised. She carried 2 paper bags and a bright smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Brought a few things for you," she said, setting the bags on the counter. "Groceries, some vitamins, and a few supplements I swear by. You'll feel amazing." "That's very thoughtful," I said. She moved through the kitchen like she owned it, opening cabinets, rearranging spices, checking expiration dates. I watched her quietly. She wasn't helping, she was inspecting. After a few minutes, she turned and said, "You know, Clara, this place could use a little update. Maybe a fresh coat of paint, new flooring. Ethan and I were talking. We could help you set that up. It might even raise the value." "I like it the way it is," I said. She laughed lightly. "Of course, but imagine how much easier it would be to sell someday if—" "I'm not selling." The room went silent. She blinked, then smiled again, too quickly. "I didn't mean now. I just think you'd feel better with less to worry about." "I'm fine with what I have," I said. Her eyes lingered on me for a second too long, then she changed the subject. Later that afternoon, Ethan called. His voice was careful. "Mom, Vanessa mentioned you seemed tense again. Are you sure everything's okay?" "I'm perfectly fine," he hesitated. "She's just trying to help. She thinks you'd be happier if we handled things, bills, maintenance, you know. It's a lot for one person." "Ethan," I said softly, "I've been paying bills longer than you've been alive." He exhaled, a small sound of frustration. "You always take things the wrong way." "No," I thought, "I take them exactly the way they're meant." That evening, they both came over together, no warning this time. Vanessa carried a folder, slim and white. "We just want to make things easier," she said as soon as she stepped in. "We drew up a few documents, nothing final, just so everything's clear, in case of emergency." Ethan looked nervous. "It's just practical stuff, Mom. Power of attorney, co-ownership, that kind of thing." I stared at the folder. "And who would have that power?" Vanessa smiled, setting it gently on the table. "We thought it made sense for Ethan to handle things. You know, family." I looked at my son, my boy, who once brought me seashells and promised he'd never leave. His eyes darted away. "I see," I said. Vanessa slid a pen across the table. "There's no rush, of course, but it's smart to plan ahead." I didn't touch it. "I'll read it over later," I said. "Of course," she said again, that same practiced tone. "Take your time." They stayed for dinner, though none of us ate much. Every word felt weighted, every smile brittle. When they finally left, I sat at the table staring at that folder. I didn't open it. I didn't need to. I already knew what was inside. The next morning, Ethan texted, "Mom, just checking if you've looked at the papers. Vanessa says it's really simple." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Mr. Harris. "Keep everything sealed," I said. And if anyone calls asking about me or the house, you never heard of it." He understood immediately. "Understood, Mrs. Jennings." That night, Vanessa called. Her voice was soft, almost tender. "Clara, I hope you're not upset about yesterday. We just want to make sure you're protected." "I appreciate that," I said. "Good," she said, relief in her tone. "Maybe next week we can go over it together." I smiled, though she couldn't see it. "Sure, next week." When we hung up, I made myself a cup of tea and sat on the porch. The ocean was calm again, small waves lapping against the shore. I thought about how people mistake calm for weakness, but calm is what happens when you already know the ending. I didn't open the folder that night either. I tucked it in the drawer beneath the Bible, right under the envelope from Mr. Harris. It was strange, really, watching someone so sure they were winning when you already knew you'd taken the board away. The following week, Vanessa stopped pretending. She showed up on a Thursday afternoon, no groceries, no smiles, just her phone in one hand and a look that could slice glass. "We need to talk," she said. "Ethan not coming?" I asked. "He's at work. I thought this would be easier without him." That told me everything. She followed me into the kitchen, heels clicking against the tile like a countdown. She didn't sit this time. She just stood there, arms crossed. "I'm going to be straightforward, Clara," she began. "We can't keep doing this dance. The house, the bills, the paperwork, it's too much for you. It's time to make decisions." I poured myself coffee. "I've made them." Her lips tightened. "Then make me understand them." "Because Ethan doesn't." I looked at her over the rim of the cup. "Ethan doesn't understand because you're the one explaining things to him." Her expression flickered. A crack in the mask, quick but real. "I'm trying to protect my husband," she said, "and you're making that impossible." "Protect him from what?" "From you," she snapped. The word landed hard, but I didn't let it show. She stepped closer. "You're manipulating him with guilt. You've been doing it for years, and now you're making secret arrangements behind his back, with lawyers, with God knows who." I smiled faintly. "You seem very informed for someone who's not involved." "Don't play innocent. I saw the envelopes. I know you're hiding something." "I'm old, Vanessa, not stupid," I said quietly. "You don't get to accuse me in my own house." Her voice dropped, sharp and low. "Then stop treating Ethan like a child. If you really cared about him, you'd let go." "Let go of what?" "This place, the past, the control." Control. There it was again, her favorite word. I set the cup down carefully. "You think because I'm quiet, you've won. But silence isn't surrender." For the first time, she didn't have a ready comeback. She just looked at me, her face smooth and cold. Then she said, "You'll regret this." She left without another word. That evening, Ethan called, his voice tight. "Mom, what happened today?" "You should ask your wife," I said. "She's upset. She said you accused her of things." "I didn't accuse her of anything. I told her the truth." "Which is?" "That she's trying to make my life smaller so hers can be bigger." He was silent. I could hear traffic in the background. Maybe the sound of him rubbing his forehead the way Paul used to when he was torn between two sides. "Mom," he said finally, "I love you, but you're making this hard." "I'm not the one making it hard," I said. "I'm just not making it easy anymore." When the call ended, I sat in the dark for a long time. The house hummed quietly, refrigerator, wind, the faint rattle of old windows. Everything felt on the edge of something. 2 days later, I went to the post office and mailed a letter to Mr. Harris. Inside was a short note. "If anything happens to me, contact the Hospice Foundation immediately. They have full authorization." No drama, no emotion, just instruction. When I got home, there was a new message on my answering machine. Vanessa's voice, calm but sharp beneath the surface. "Clara, I think we started off wrong. Let's reset." "Sunday dinner? Just you and me." I played it twice. It wasn't an invitation. It was a warning dressed as kindness. That Sunday, I set the table for two. Simple meal, nothing fancy. When she arrived, she looked immaculate as always, but there was tension in her shoulders. She sat down, smiled, and said, "You really love this house, don't you?" "I do," I said. She leaned back, crossing her legs. "Then maybe we can come to an understanding, because if you keep fighting me, you'll lose more than this house. You'll lose Ethan completely." There it was, the truth she'd been circling around for months. I didn't flinch. If that's the price, then it's already paid. She stared at me for a moment as if trying to decide whether to laugh or threaten me again, but she didn't do either. She just stood up, thanked me for dinner, and left. When the door closed, I exhaled slowly. I wasn't scared anymore. Whatever game she thought she was playing, she didn't know I'd already changed the rules. 3 days passed before I heard from them again. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Ethan. "Mom, we need to talk. Vanessa's lawyer will be in touch. Please don't panic." For a moment, I just stared at the screen. Then I set the phone down and made tea. The next morning, a letter arrived. Thick paper, official header, a property consultation. Not quite a threat, not quite a request, just a shadow in legal form. Vanessa didn't waste time. She came that same afternoon, this time without pretense. She walked in like she'd already won. "Ethan thought it would be better if I handled this," she said, sitting at the table. "He's too emotional about you." "About me?" I asked. She nodded. "He doesn't want to admit you're not capable of managing things anymore. I told him it's normal. Aging is hard." Her voice was soft, rehearsed, dripping with concern. I'd heard that same tone used by nurses talking to patients who didn't realize they were dying. "I appreciate your diagnosis," I said. She smiled, ignoring the bite. "If you just sign over partial rights, everything could be easier. We can manage taxes, maintenance, all that stress. You can focus on your health." "My health is fine," her smile faltered. "You can't keep this up forever, Clara. And Ethan, well, he's torn. He loves you, but he has to think about our future too." "So do I said. She tilted her head. "Then do the right thing." I stood up, slow and steady. "I already have." For the first time, she looked unsure. She left soon after, but not before saying, "Don't make this harder than it has to be." That night, I couldn't sleep. The moonlight spilled across the kitchen floor, soft and cold. I thought about Paul, how he used to say that evil rarely arrives shouting. It comes smiling, holding a clipboard. The next day, Ethan showed up alone. He looked exhausted, like someone who hadn't slept in days. "Mum," he said, "Vanessa thinks you're being manipulated by someone. She's worried this lawyer is scamming you." I almost laughed. "Mr. Harris? He's known me longer than she's known you." Ethan rubbed his face. "I don't know what to believe anymore." "Then believe what you see," I said, "not what you're told." He sighed, leaning back in his chair. "You're both making me crazy." "She's fighting for ownership," I said. "I'm fighting for peace. You tell me which one sounds crazier." He didn't answer. When he left, I felt both heavier and lighter, like something had cracked open. That weekend, the lawyer called again. "Mrs. Jennings," he began, "there's been some confusion about property boundaries. A woman named Cole reached out on your behalf." "She's not on my behalf," I said. He hesitated. "Then I'll disregard her message." "Do," I said. By Sunday, I knew what she'd do next. People like Vanessa never stop when told no. They escalate. And I was right. Monday morning, I found her standing in my driveway with Ethan beside her. He looked pale. "Clara," she said, her tone syrupy, "we just want to make sure everything's clear before this gets messy. I'd hate for anyone to think you're being taken advantage of." I looked at her, then at my son. "Ethan, did you bring her here?" He didn't answer. His silence told me enough. So I turned to Vanessa. "You've spent a lot of time worrying about things that don't belong to you." She smiled thinly. "Maybe I'm just better at managing them." You manage people, I said, not things, and that always ends the same way. Her eyes narrowed. You're bluffing. Am I? I walked inside without another word. I could feel her watching me through the window as I took out my phone and made a call. Mr. Harris, I said, please confirm the letter's delivery to the Hospice Foundation. It was received and recorded this morning, he said. Everything's official. I hung up, turned toward the window and met her gaze. For the first time, Vanessa looked uncertain. Her confidence cracked, just slightly. Ethan called my name from the porch, but I didn't move. I just stood there, watching as realization crept across her face that whatever she thought she was controlling was already gone. They left without another word. That night, I wrote in my journal, "You don't need revenge when truth has perfect timing." And for the first time in a long time, I slept soundly. A week passed before I heard from either of them. Then, early one morning, I saw Vanessa's name flash on my phone. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. "Clara," she said, her voice tight, controlled. "Did you tell anyone about the house?" "No," I said evenly. "Should I have?" She exhaled sharply. "We got a call from some charity foundation. They said you made a donation in your husband's name. For property." I didn't reply. "Ethan's furious," she continued. "He thinks you've been manipulated into giving away your inheritance. You need to call him and explain." "I don't owe anyone an explanation," I said. "Clara." I hung up. 2 hours later, Ethan arrived. He didn't knock. He just walked in, eyes wide and red. "Mom, tell me this isn't true." "It is," I said softly. He looked like he'd been punched. "You gave the house away? To strangers?" "To a hospice foundation, the same one that cared for your father." He ran a hand through his hair. "Vanessa says they tricked you." "They didn't," I said. "I made that choice a long time ago. I just never told you." He sat down hard, staring at the floor. For a moment, I saw the boy he used to be, the one who'd hide behind me when the thunder was too loud. "Why, Mom? Why didn't you trust me?" I took a breath. "Because you stopped being someone I could trust." He flinched, but didn't argue. The silence between us stretched thin. Finally, he said, "Vanessa's losing it. She says this could affect our credit, our taxes, everything." I almost smiled. Funny how she talks about everything as if it's hers. "She's scared," he said. She thought she'd win." He didn't respond. That afternoon they left town. I didn't ask where. The house felt still again, the kind of quiet that isn't lonely, just peaceful. A few days later, I got a call from Mr. Harris. "Just so you're aware," he said, "Ms. Cole contacted the foundation directly. She demanded proof of ownership and threatened legal action." "What did they say?" "They told her the deed is airtight. There's nothing she can do." "Good," I said. He hesitated. "She's persistent, Mrs. Jennings. Be careful." "I've lived with worse," I said. That night, rain came in waves, tapping against the windows. I sat in Paul's chair with a blanket around my shoulders, watching lightning flicker over the sea. I thought about Vanessa, probably pacing her perfect apartment, drafting new plans, making new calls. People like her don't break easily. They unravel slowly, thread by thread, pulled by their own hands. 3 days later, Ethan called again. His voice was different this time, smaller. "Mom," he said quietly, "Vanessa moved out." I didn't say anything. "She said she needed space," he continued. "Then I found out she drained our joint account." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "I should have seen it," he said. "All the signs were there. I just didn't want to admit it." "Love makes us blind," I said. "But truth always has better eyesight." He laughed, not joyfully, but like someone remembering how. "You always have a line for everything." "I've had a lot of time to think," I said. He was quiet for a while, then said, "Do you hate me for how I treated you?" "No," I said. "You were lost. We all get lost sometimes." He sniffed, then laughed again, shaky this time. You sound like Dad. I wish he were here, I said softly. Me too. When we hung up, I sat for a long while, listening to the rain ease into silence. I wasn't happy, exactly. But there was a lightness inside me, the kind that comes after a long, hard storm, when you realize the roof held after all. That night, I wrote in my journal again. Peace doesn't arrive with apologies. It arrives when you stop needing them. Outside, the tide was low, the moon half hidden. Somewhere out there, Vanessa was learning what it felt like to lose control. And I didn't need to see it to know the sea always takes back what doesn't belong. It was nearly 2 weeks before I saw Ethan again. I didn't expect him to come, not after everything. But one morning, as I was trimming the roses by the porch, I heard a car door close. He stood there, hands in his pockets, looking smaller somehow. The wind tugged at his jacket, and for a moment I saw the boy he used to be, shy, gentle, full of apology before he even spoke. "Hey, Mom," he said quietly. "Hey," I replied. He stepped closer but didn't cross the porch steps, as if waiting for permission. "Can we talk?" "Of course." We went inside. I made coffee, the old way he liked, 2 sugars, a splash of milk. He sat at the table looking around the kitchen like he hadn't really seen it in years. "It feels smaller," he said. "Maybe you got bigger," I answered. He smiled faintly. Then his expression shifted. "I don't know how to start this." "Then start where it hurts," I said. He looked down at his hands. "I believed her, Mom. Every word. I thought you were trying to control me, that you couldn't let go. She made it sound so reasonable, so kind. I didn't see what she was doing until it was too late." I didn't say anything. I just let him talk. "She drained everything, the account, the savings. She even tried to sell the car. And when I confronted her, she said it was all for us, for our future. Then she walked out." "I'm sorry," I said softly. He nodded, eyes wet. "You warned me. I just didn't want to hear it." "That's how love works sometimes," I said. "We mistake control for care until we can't anymore." He laughed weakly. "Guess I learned it the hard way." "The best lessons are the ones that cost us something," I said. He looked at me then, really looked. The kind of gaze that searches for forgiveness but doesn't know if it'll find any. "Can you ever forgive me?" "There's nothing to forgive," I said. "You were trying to love someone. That's never wrong. You just chose the wrong teacher." He wiped his face, exhaled shakily. "You always know how to make things sound simple." "They're only simple once they're over," I said. For a while we just sat there, the clock ticking between us. Then he said, "What happens now? With the house? With everything?" "The house is taken care of," I said. "When I'm gone, it'll go where it's meant to." He nodded slowly. "I get it. It's fair." I smiled. "You sound older." "I feel older," he said. He stayed for hours that day. We talked about little things, Paul's fishing trips, old movies, the cat we used to have. At one point, he laughed for real. It was small, but it was enough. Before he left, he stood in the doorway and said, "I don't deserve you." "No one has to deserve love," I said. "They just have to learn from it." He hugged me then, not the polite, distracted hug from before, but the kind that stays. I felt his shoulders shake, and I held on until he steadied. When he drove away, I didn't feel the usual ache, just a quiet kind of peace, the kind that comes from knowing something's finally settled. That night, I sat at my desk and opened my journal again. The last page was blank. I wrote, "Forgiveness isn't about erasing pain, it's about refusing to let pain rewrite who you are." Then I closed the book and turned off the light. Outside, the ocean was calm again, that steady rhythm I'd come to depend on. Somewhere in the distance, a gull cried, and I thought of Paul, of Ethan, of the pieces of love that stay even when everything else changes. I made myself a cup of tea, opened the window, and let the night air in. It smelled like salt and rain and something clean, like starting over. And for the first time in years, I realized I wasn't waiting for anything. Not for an apology, not for justice, not even for understanding, just peace. And peace, when it finally came, was enough. It's been almost a year since everything happened. Sometimes I still wake up expecting to hear Paul's voice in the kitchen or Ethan's car pulling into the driveway. Old habits linger longer than love sometimes, but mornings are quiet now, and I've learnt to like them that way. The house feels different, though not empty. It breathes again. I repainted the porch, fixed the railing, planted lavender along the walkway. Every little thing I do here feels like reclaiming a piece of myself. Ethan visits more often now, not every week, but enough. He brings coffee, fixes things I didn't ask him to fix, tells me about work. He still carries guilt in his eyes, but I don't let him sit in it too long. Guilt is just love that doesn't know where to go. One afternoon, he showed up with a box of old photos. "I found these," he said, smiling a little. Inside were pictures from every stage of our lives, birthdays, holidays, small moments I'd forgotten. Paul laughing with cake on his face, Ethan holding his first bike, me, younger, tired but happy. We spent hours going through them. At one point he said, "You were right, about her." "I wasn't trying to be," I said. "I know, you just saw her clearer than I did." He looked at me then and said, "I don't think I ever told you this, but I'm proud to be your son." It was a small sentence, but it landed deep. I didn't cry. I just reached across the table and squeezed his hand. That was enough. He still talks about moving someday, maybe starting over somewhere new. I tell him he should. Life is too short to stay in the same mistakes. But he always says, "Not yet." Sometimes I think he's waiting until he's sure I'm really okay. Maybe I am. The Hospice Foundation sends me letters every few months, updates about the renovations, pictures of families sitting in the garden, stories of patients finding peace in their final days. They renamed the place the Jennings House. I didn't ask them to. They just did. The first time I saw the sign, I cried in the car. Not from sadness, but from the strange beauty of it. That this house, the place where I lost and loved and rebuilt, would outlive me as a home for others to find comfort in. Paul would have liked that. He believed walls could hold love if you built them right. I spend my days reading, tending the garden, volunteering at the local clinic. I make banana bread sometimes, just because the smell reminds me that sweetness can still come from the same hands that once trembled. People in town still ask about Ethan, about Vanessa. I tell them the truth. He's doing better, and she's somewhere learning her own lessons. I don't say her name with bitterness anymore. She taught me something valuable, that peace doesn't come from being untouched, but from surviving the touch and choosing calm anyway. Every evening, I walk down to the shore with Daisy. She's older now, slower, but she still wags her tail like she understands the rhythm of the waves. I throw pebbles into the water and watch them disappear, each ripple stretching wider, softer, until it fades completely. That's how life feels now, the ripples finally settling. Sometimes I think about what I'd say if Paul were here. Probably something simple like, "I did it, I made it through." And I think he'd smile and say, "I knew you would." Last week, Ethan brought me a small wooden box he made himself. Inside was a seashell, smooth, white, worn by years of salt. "Remember?" he said, "from when I was little." I held it in my palm, the edges soft from time. "I remember," I said. He smiled. "You used to tell me that no matter what happens, the sea always gives something back." I still believe that, I told him. Now, every morning, I place that shell on the windowsill where the sun hits it first. A small reminder that even after loss, there's light. And when people ask me if I ever regret giving the house away, I tell them the truth. No. Because sometimes you have to lose something to prove it was yours all along. I used to think endings were supposed to be loud, that they came with doors slamming, people shouting, tears falling like punctuation marks. But most endings, the real ones, arrive quietly. They slip into your life like a soft evening breeze, and one day you realize the storm has passed. These days, my life is simple. I wake up early, make coffee, open the windows to let the ocean in. The world feels smaller but kinder now. I don't need much, just space to breathe and silence that doesn't hurt anymore. People sometimes ask if I ever feel lonely. I tell them the truth. Being alone isn't the same as being lonely. I was lonelier when I lived surrounded by noise that didn't understand me. Ethan still visits on Sundays. We don't talk about Vanessa anymore. He brings groceries, fixes the squeaky hinges, and stays for dinner. Sometimes he helps me fold laundry and I catch him humming, the same off-key tune his father used to hum every morning. I think that's when I know we're both healing. A few weeks ago, he said, "You seem happier, Mum." I smiled. I stopped waiting for other people to give me permission to be. He laughed, and for once it sounded young again. I think about Vanessa sometimes, not with anger, but with a kind of detached gratitude. She taught me that control and love can wear the same face, and that trusting the wrong person isn't the same as being foolish. It just means you still believe in good, even when others don't. If I ever saw her again, I don't think I'd say anything cruel. Maybe just, "I hope you learned what you came here to learn." Because I think that's what life does to all of us. It teaches us, whether we ask for it or not. The Hospice Foundation invited me to visit the renovated house last month. I almost said no, but curiosity won. When I got there, I barely recognized it. Bright walls, open windows, laughter echoing down the hall. A nurse told me a patient spends her evenings sitting by the same porch where I once sat, watching the sea. She says it makes her feel like home, the nurse said. I stood there for a while, breathing in the salt air, the smell of new paint and memory. It didn't feel like loss. It felt like something had come full circle. Later that night, I wrote another entry in my journal. Maybe love isn't about keeping people close. Maybe it's about building something strong enough to hold them when you're gone. I closed the book and placed it in the drawer beside Paul's Bible. Everything that needed to be said was already written, in words, in silence, in the spaces between. Sometimes when I walk along the beach, I find seashells washed up after a storm. Some are cracked, some whole, some worn smooth by years of salt and sand. I take them home, line them on the windowsill. Each one feels like a reminder that even what breaks can still be beautiful if you let time touch it kindly. On clear nights, I sit on the porch with Daisy asleep at my feet, and I watch the horizon fade into the dark. The ocean never changes, and yet it's never the same. It keeps moving, forgiving, starting over. And I realize that's what I've learnt to do too. If someone asked me now what I'd tell my younger self, I'd say, stop trying to hold on to what's slipping away. Sometimes letting go is how you hold on differently. And if they asked me what I'd say to Ethan, I'd say, you can love someone and still let them live their own lessons. That's not weakness. That's grace. As for me, I've made peace with every version of my life. The woman who loved too much, the one who lost too much, and the one who finally learnt to stay still. I think that's all any of us can really hope for in the end. Not to win, not to be right, but to be free. And freedom, I've learnt, doesn't always look like running away. Sometimes it looks like staying exactly where you are, smiling at the sea, knowing you've already survived everything that tried to drown you.